Because of why I search the deep through endless nights, no time to sleep. The call inside I can't deny. I'll find the light because of why.
Hey everyone, and welcome. You know, when you look at South Korea today, you see these global giants like Samsung and Hyundai. You hear K-pop everywhere. It's easy to forget just how different things were not that long ago. So how did they pull it off? How did South Korea get so rich so incredibly fast? Well, that's one of the most amazing economic stories of the last century. And today, we're going to unpack exactly how that miracle happened. To really get the scale of this, you have to see the starting line. And get this, in 1960, South Korea's economy per person was on the same level as the Congo's. The Philippines, that was seen as a goal that was almost impossible to reach. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. That's the hole they had to climb out of. So, the big question is, how does a country go from that level of poverty to a global powerhouse? Well, the story really kicks off in the aftermath of a devastating war, with a huge political shakeup that gave the entire nation one single-minded goal: get rich and do it now. I mean, it's hard to overstate how bad things were. After the Korean War, the country was just shattered. The government was a mess, super unstable, notoriously corrupt, and the economy was basically on life support, kept afloat almost entirely by foreign aid, mostly from the US. It was a really, really desperate time. And then, boom, everything changed. In 1961, there was a military coup, and General Park Chung-hee took power. Now, his government was authoritarian, no doubt about it, but they completely swept away the old, messy politics and focused the entire country on one thing and one thing only: rebuilding the economy at lightning speed. Okay, so to pull off this massive goal, Park's government didn't just cross their fingers and hope for growth. No, they engineered it. They took direct, absolute control of the economy, and they built a brand new, powerful organization to act as the command center for the whole operation. This was called the Economic Planning Board, or the EPB for short. And you should really think of it as the strategic brain for the entire country's economy. This was no small committee either. The head of the EPB was also the deputy prime minister. That tells you everything you need to know about their priorities. Economic planning was second only to the president himself. And the EPB's power was just immense. I mean, they were the ones who drew up the famous 5-year plans that guided everything. They controlled the entire national budget. They managed every single dollar of foreign investment coming into the country. And they had the power to tell all the other economic ministries what to do. They were pulling every single lever. So you might be asking, how did they make sure everyone followed the plan? Simple. They controlled the money. The government took over all the banks. This let them funnel cheap, government-backed loans to the exact industries they wanted to build up, like steel or shipbuilding. It was a pretty straightforward system. If your company hit the government's targets, you got more money. If you failed, the money dried up. It was discipline through finance, pure and simple. So now you have this massive state-controlled machine. What do you aim it at? Well, they pointed all that power at one single obsessive strategy that would define South Korea for decades: export, or else. And just look at the results. It was absolutely explosive. In 1963, they were exporting less than $87 million worth of goods. Just 8 years later, that number shot past $1 billion. And look at those growth rates. We're talking 30, 40, even 47% in a single year. This wasn't just gradual growth. It was like an economic big bang, fueled entirely by selling stuff to the rest of the world. And this quote from a former EPB official really tells you everything about the mindset. He said that for companies, the export targets weren't just business goals. They were treated like orders or missions. This wasn't just about making a profit. It was framed as a national crusade, almost like a military campaign for economic victory. So you add up all this intense government planning, this total state control, and this relentless focus on exports. What do you get? Well, you get what the world started calling the miracle on the Han River. And here's the number that really defines that miracle. For 15 years straight, from 1965 to 1980, South Korea's economy grew at an average rate of 10% per year. I mean, to put that into perspective, most developed countries today are thrilled if they hit 2 or 3% growth. This was sustained, hyperspeed industrialization on a scale the world had almost never seen before. And you can see that journey laid out pretty clearly here. It all starts with Park's coup in '61 and those first 5-year plans. By the '70s, they got more ambitious, shifting focus to heavy industries. But all that success created new tensions, leading to huge labor strikes in 1987. And finally, the culmination of it all. In 1996, South Korea was officially invited to join the OECD, the exclusive club of the world's richest countries. Mission accomplished. But this is where the story gets really interesting, because the very model that created all this incredible success also contained the seeds of its own destruction. So here's the central irony of the whole story. By successfully building this massive industrial economy, the state accidentally created 2 new, really powerful forces in society. First, you had the giant family-owned conglomerates, the chaebol. And second, you had a huge, organized industrial working class. And eventually, both of these groups got powerful enough to start pushing back against the state's total control. You can see that power shift really clearly here. Back in the day, the state was king. The big companies were totally dependent on it for loans, and labor unions were basically illegal. But fast forward to the '80s and '90s, and the tables have completely turned. The state's grip was weakening. The chaebol were now global giants who didn't need the government's help, and the labor movement was organized, powerful, and demanding a bigger piece of the pie. And this all created a kind of a perfect storm. You had the new, powerful labor unions winning higher wages, which squeezed profits. The chaebol grew so big that the government couldn't really control them anymore. They were too big to fail. They started investing recklessly, borrowing massive amounts of foreign money for risky projects. And on top of all that, the rest of the world was pressuring Korea to open up its protected markets. The old system was starting to crack. And it all came to a spectacular crash in 1997 during the Asian financial crisis. The whole system just broke. South Korea was forced to take the largest IMF bailout in history up to that point, a mind-boggling $57 billion. That moment was really the final nail in the coffin for that old developmental state model. It forced the country to completely restructure into the more open, market-driven economy we see today. And this whole saga leaves us with a really fascinating big-picture question. Was South Korea's state-led miracle some kind of blueprint that other developing countries can follow to get rich? Or was it a unique event, born from a very specific moment in history, a model that was incredibly successful for a time, but ultimately had an expiration date built right into it? Honestly, it's a huge debate, and there are no easy answers. We would love to hear what you think, so definitely drop your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, if you found this breakdown interesting and maybe learned something new, please do us a huge favor and hit that like button, share it with a friend, and make sure you subscribe for more deep dives like this one. Thanks so much for watching.